What if I told you the most powerful keys in the world were not nuclear codes, not political treaties, not even ancient treasures, but the keys to Buckingham Palace? And what if those keys, the symbol of royal power, loyalty, and centuries of history, were handed over in silence, not to the reigning monarch but to his son and daughter-in-law, behind locked doors, in the dead of night? No cameras, no balcony, no ceremony. Just a frail king, a quiet exchange, and a monarchy standing on the edge of collapse. This is not just history unfolding. This is betrayal, secrecy, and survival. And tonight, I'll take you inside the walls of Buckingham to uncover the hidden ceremony that could reshape the British crown forever. For centuries, Buckingham Palace has been more than stone walls and gilded gates. It is the heart of the monarchy, the fortress of tradition, the stage of power, and the vault of secrets. Behind those golden gates, lives have been destroyed, legacies have been made, and the fate of Britain itself has been written. To hold its keys is not simply to possess a palace, it is to command the very soul of the monarchy. That is why, when whispers spread of King Charles secretly handing over Buckingham to William and Catherine, the shock was immediate, and the implications devastating. It was not done in daylight. There were no flags raised, no public cheers, no grand royal announcement. Instead, silence. A closed chamber, a trembling hand, and the cold steel of keys passed from one monarch to the next generation, like a confession whispered in the dark. Why so sudden? Why so secret? Charles, a man who had waited his entire life for the throne, who endured decades of humiliation, scandal, and doubt, now appeared desperate, as if time itself was no longer on his side. His health, long a subject of speculation, seemed to shadow every decision. Inside that room stood only a handful of witnesses, loyal aides, trusted confidants, William and Catherine. Their faces were pale, their expressions heavy with what was about to take place. And when Charles placed those keys into their hands, it was not just an exchange of power. It was surrender. It was legacy. It was the unspoken admission that his reign was slipping faster than anyone dared to admit. But in that silence, one absence screamed louder than words. Where was Camilla? Where was the queen consort, the woman who wore the crown at Charles's side? Her absence was no mistake. It was deliberate. And in that deliberate silence, a fracture opened inside the palace walls. A fracture between love and duty, between wife and monarchy, between Charles's heart and his crown. And so, what should have been a moment of stability became a moment of suspicion. Had Charles seen danger in the shadows? Had he feared betrayal, even from those closest to him? And why, above all, was Catherine, not William, placed at the very center of this secret handover? The palace was built on silence, but silence never lasts. Within days of the secret handover, whispers began to leak, first inside the corridors of Whitehall, then through the hands of journalists who lived for royal scandal, and soon the story spread across the globe. King Charles had privately handed Buckingham Palace to William and Catherine. It was the kind of revelation that sent shockwaves through Britain. If true, it meant that the monarchy had shifted behind. Closed doors, without ceremony, without parliament, and without the people's consent. The palace, desperate to contain the fire, issued swift denials. Spokesmen claimed the king remained firmly in control, that any stories of transition were wild speculation. But the louder the denial, the faster the speculation grew. Reporters dug deeper. Anonymous sources, some said to be courtiers, others alleged to be close to Camilla, whispered that the event was real. They spoke of a quiet gathering, a trembling king, and the metallic sound of keys changing hands. For the public, this was more than gossip. It was betrayal. Why would Charles, who had waited 70 years to rule, hand over Buckingham so soon? Was his health collapsing? Was he too weak to lead? Or, worse, was there division within the royal household? The world demanded answers, and every unanswered question turned into fire. Camilla's exclusion, a queen without a throne. At the center of the storm stood one figure, silent yet furious: Queen Camilla. To her allies, her exclusion from the ceremony was an act of humiliation. She had stood by Charles through decades of scorn, been crowned at his side, and endured a lifetime of criticism. Yet in the palace's most sacred moment, she was locked out. Inside her circle, whispers grew sharper. Some said she had been betrayed. Others believed Charles had never fully trusted her with the future of the monarchy. Camilla's supporters did not stay quiet. Stories began to surface, painting Catherine not as the devoted daughter-in-law, but as an ambitious figure, carefully, building her power while smiling for the cameras. Tabloids latched onto it. Catherine the Ruthless? The Queen-in-Waiting's secret coup. It was everything Camilla feared, the public shifting its love, its loyalty, its attention, away from her and toward Catherine. For the first time since her marriage to Charles, Camilla found herself cast not as a queen, but as an outsider. William's breaking point. And then there was William. He had accepted the keys that night with steady hands. But in private, those same hands trembled. For decades, he had lived with the knowledge that one day the throne would be his, but always in the future, always distant. Now, suddenly, the future was here, thrust upon him not with ceremony, but with secrecy and shadows. Late at night, away from the cameras, he confessed to his closest aides, "Am I ready to lead now? Am I ready to be king? Or am I still the boy who watched his mother's funeral?" The weight of history pressed hard against him. The memory of Diana, the image of his grandmother, the duty he could not escape. He wanted a quieter life, a life of service without spectacle. But the keys in his hand told him that escape was no longer possible. For the first time, William's composure cracked. He feared not just for himself, but for his children. "If I fall," he whispered, "will George be forced to rise too soon?" Catherine's silent strength, it was Catherine who steadied him. While Camilla's allies fumed and William's doubt grew, Catherine remained calm, calculating and resolute. She knew the eyes of the nation were already turning to her. She knew the cameras were capturing every smile, every gesture, every whisper of grace. But behind that grace was steel. When William broke down, she reminded him of the truth. "The monarchy isn't just about us, it's about the people, and the people already see you as their king." She told him that their strength was not in palaces or crowns, but in their family, in their unity, in the faith that Britain placed in them. And she was right. Polls already showed the public siding with her. While Camilla was seen as an outsider, Catherine's image was spotless. The perfect mother, the dutiful wife, the modern princess who had become the hope of the monarchy. To the world, she was not just William's partner. She was the monarchy's savior. The shadow of Charles, but looming above them all, was Charles. His health remained a mystery, his public appearances rare, his speeches shorter, his face weary. Each time he vanished from view, speculation grew louder. Was the king dying? Had he already stepped aside? Inside the palace, whispers claimed Charles had done the unthinkable, passed power in silence, not by law, but by choice. If true, it was not just a scandal. It was abdication. But Charles had chosen not to abdicate publicly, because to admit it openly would shatter the monarchy. Instead, he had acted in secrecy, in ritual, in shadows, passing the keys as quietly as a man writing his will. And in that silence, The crown's future had already shifted. The whispers had turned into storms. Across Britain, the monarchy was no longer untouchable. The press no longer spoke with reverence, but with suspicion. The people no longer asked if the crown would endure, they asked if it should. The people's revolt of words. For decades, the monarchy survived because the people believed in its stability. But when the leak spread, when the world learned that keys had passed in silence, everything changed. On television, broadcasters asked, "If the king is too weak to reign, why hasn't Parliament been told?" On the streets, protesters held signs, "No crown without consent." This is not democracy. And on social media, the divide grew sharper. Some hailed William and Catherine as the rightful saviors, the modern monarchs Britain needed. Others accused them of stealing power, of staging a palace coup behind Charles's back. The monarchy, already fragile, now looked less like an institution of unity and more like a fractured dynasty fighting for survival. Camilla's counterattack. If the public was divided, Camilla was not. She was enraged. She had been excluded from the most sacred ritual of power. Her husband had chosen William and Catherine over her. And worse, the world now whispered that she had no place in the monarchy's future. From her side of the palace, Camilla began to fight back. Allies in the press suddenly received new stories, subtle, sharp, and poisonous. Stories that painted Catherine as too ambitious. Stories that called William uncertain, unstable, even weak. Stories that reminded the world that Camilla had stood beside Charles through his darkest years, while Catherine had only ever known privilege. The tabloids loved it. Queen Camilla versus Princess Catherine. Palace power struggle explodes. It was everything Charles had feared, the monarchy turning against itself, not from outside forces but from within. Camilla did not forgive. Those close to her described her silence not as acceptance but as fury. She had waited her whole life for legitimacy, suffered whispers of mistress, endured the nation's hatred, clawed her way into respectability. And now, at the very height of her reign, she had been humiliated, cut out, forgotten, replaced. Behind closed doors, she demanded answers from Charles. Why had she not been invited? Why had William and Catherine been elevated above her? Why had he, her husband, her king, sided with the very woman she saw as her rival? Charles offered no clear reply. Perhaps he was too weak. Perhaps he regretted the choice. Or perhaps deep down he knew the truth, that Catherine was the only one who could save the monarchy. But to Camilla, silence was betrayal, and betrayal demanded revenge. Catherine versus Camilla. The silent war. The press, sensing blood, framed it as a rivalry of queens. On one side, Camilla, crowned but unloved, furious but fading. On the other, Catherine, uncrowned but adored, silent but ascendant. Every public appearance became a battlefield. If Catherine wore white, Camilla appeared in black. If Catherine smiled with children, Camilla staged her own charity visits. But no matter how hard Camilla tried, the cameras always found Catherine first. To the public, there was no contest. Catherine was grace, beauty, and modern strength. Camilla was history's shadow, and the palace, once united, became a house divided. William, under siege, but behind Catherine's calm, William was breaking. The weight of the keys, the literal and symbolic weight, grew heavier each day. Every headline screamed his name. Every whisper in Parliament asked the same question. Was he ready? Was he capable? Could he lead Britain in an age where monarchy itself was questioned? He had no choice but to perform strength. Yet, in private, he faltered. At night, he admitted. To Catherine, the truth he could not say to the world. I am not my grandmother. I am not my father. I do not know if I can hold this together. But Catherine refused to let him collapse. "You do not need to be them," she told him. "You need to be you, and the people already believe in you. That is enough." The king's decline. Meanwhile, Charles faded further into the background. His public appearances grew rare. When he did appear, his voice shook, his steps slowed. Rumors of illness circled endlessly. Some claimed cancer, others a hidden stroke, others whispered he had mere months to live. But the truth mattered little. What mattered was perception. And the perception was this: Charles was already gone. The monarchy was already William's. The turning point. Then came the night that changed everything. A journalist published a story claiming 3 separate sources had confirmed it. Charles had privately abdicated in favor of William and Catherine. The palace denied it instantly. But the story had spread too far. The idea had rooted itself in the public's mind. And once an idea takes root, denial cannot kill it. Britain now believed its future had arrived early. Whether the palace admitted it or not, William and Catherine were already king and queen. And Charles was a ghost. The palace in silence. Heart of London had always beat to the rhythm of Buckingham Palace. Its flag told the world who reigned. Its balcony told the people who ruled. But in the winter of that year, the palace fell quiet. Charles's appearances became rare, then vanished. Rumors grew darker. "He is dying," some whispered. "He has already stepped aside," others claimed. The truth remained locked behind gilded gates, but one thing was clear: Britain's king was fading, and as Charles weakened, the palace fractured. Camilla's last stand. Camilla, furious at her erasure, fought to preserve her crown. She rallied her allies inside the palace, pressed Charles's courtiers, demanded that her place be restored. But the people had made their choice. At every event, it was Catherine they cheered. At every front page, it was Catherine they crowned, in ink and image. Camilla's power came from the crown on her head. Catherine's came from the love of the people. And in the monarchy, love was the stronger weapon. So Camilla raged. But her rage echoed only in empty halls. William's burden. Meanwhile, William bore the weight of destiny. Every eye turned to him, every headline asked the same question. Was he ready to rule? In private, he doubted himself. The crown was not a gift. It was a curse. His father had been broken by it, his mother had been destroyed by it, and now it loomed over him like a shadow he could not escape. But Catherine never faltered. "The world does not need another king," she told him one night as they stood at a palace window. "It needs you, as you are, and I will be at your side." The farewell of a king. Then came the moment that would never be shown on television, never captured by cameras, never written in official history. A private room, drawn curtains, the air heavy with silence. Charles, frail, pale, his crown set aside on a velvet cloth. In his hands, the same keys he had once passed to William and Catherine. He did not speak long. He did not need to. With shaking hands, he placed the keys back into William's palm. "It is yours now. Protect it." And to Catherine, he whispered a truth no one else would hear. "You are the crown's only hope." Then he leaned back, his eyes closing. Not in death, but in surrender. The king was gone, even as he still lived. The people's. Queen days later, when William and Catherine appeared before the crowds, something shifted. William stood tall, but it was Catherine the people looked to. Catherine, whose smile calmed the storm. Catherine, whose hand on William's arm told the world that the monarchy had survived. No crown sat upon her head. No ceremony declared her queen. And yet, in the eyes of millions, she already was. The future unknown, Charles remained alive, but in silence. Camilla, still queen in name, faded from public view. William carried the burden of kingship before he was ready, and Catherine, beloved, untouchable, unchallenged, became the unspoken center of the monarchy. But questions lingered in every shadow of Buckingham Palace. Had the monarchy been saved, or had its very secrecy doomed it? Was Catherine the light of a new age, or the spark of the crown's last fire? And above all, when the keys change hands in silence, does the monarchy truly survive, or does it begin to die? The palace will never admit what truly happened. The records will never tell the whole truth. But history has a way of writing itself, not in ink, but in whispers. And those whispers say this: the crown is no longer Charles's. It is William's burden. It is Catherine's throne, and the monarchy may never be the same again.